Finally at the positive part of 2019, where I get to tell you all the albums that, while didn't make my albums of the year for the year, I don't know why I said it like that, 2019, and I felt the need to recommend them to you. Maybe they'll make your year-end lists, or maybe you'll listen to them for the remainder of 2020. But before we leave this decade, I decided, hey, these are the albums and the mixtapes and the EPs that need to go on people's dockets, because I really enjoyed them and I hope you do too. So without further ado, we're gonna hop right in. Do not under any circumstance forget to check out Celeste's Compilation 1.1. It is a great, soulful, very strong voiced performance from Celeste herself, from singles like Father Son to a bunch of others on this record. I think is pretty good. I think her voice has a lot of range, really powerful. I definitely encourage a listen. Such a sense of longing for something and sorrow in her voice, despite it being so strong and powerful, something that I don't think should be overlooked when listening to it. Tei Shi releases La Lindo, which is an indie pop record filled with a bunch of dream pop, indie pop. It sounds so soft and soothing, but it's so powerful. The space that she's able to cover, despite feeling like a very small seed in the beginning and growing and blossoming into something much bigger than the song itself vocally, I think is amazing. She has worked with people like Blood Orange before. He actually makes a slight appearance on this EP, on this album. It can get a little glitchy, a little jazzy, a little soulful. Lucy Dacus releases an EP titled 2019, and I really enjoy this record simply because of how her vocals are so harmoniously fused with the guitar strings that show up very, very, very consistently throughout this record, almost as if she's becoming one with the instrumental. But don't let that stop you from recognizing her voice, because it still has a lot of power to it and she controls her range. Roddy Ricch with Please Excuse Me for Being Antisocial came out pretty late in the year. Wasn't expecting to enjoy this project as much as I did, though I have always been, from when I first heard him, a pretty big listener of Roddy Ricch's music. One of the things that worried me most about this album was it being a little bit too repetitive, and in some cases it is. In some cases it heavily takes from inspirations like Future and Young Thug, but I do still think he's got his own style. For a good portion of the tracks off of this album, he does show us why he is to be looked at, especially for the year 2020. Trippie Redd with A Love Letter to You 4. I actually really enjoyed this album. It grew on me a little bit more after my first listen, but everything that he's doing here, I like it. You know, emo trap is a new thing, but it's definitely something that I feel like he's tapping into. Hopefully he can perfect and take to the next level on his next effort, on his next studio album, on his next mixtape. Whatever it is that we see in the cards for him going into the future, I'm just hoping that he hones in on this a little bit more and perfects it, crafts it, and turns it into something bigger, because it does have a nice sound to it with his voice, with his range, with the explosive nature of his vocals. I think he can really take this in a really good direction. While this might not be the album to do so, it is definitely, to me, a nice foundation for it to begin. Rich Brian came out with The Sailor. I actually have his vinyl. It came not too long ago right over here. Rich Brian is easily the most improved rapper of 2019. He really gave me a lot of entertainment with his album The Sailor this year. I can't really think of many instances where it disappointed me, outside of subject matter being primarily about sex and, you know, the things that some preteen would be doing, but I don't expect too much from him. Sonically, this album sounds fantastic, even on the poppier cuts here. And there are still a lot of moments here where Rich Brian's singing voice surprised me in a lot of ways. One of the best songs on this album being Yellow. Stella Donnelly with her album Beware of the Dogs. I really enjoyed this album just for the simple fact that she does know how to maintain an aesthetic without ruining it one bit. Her voice does not make this an unstable or uneasy listen whatsoever, despite some of the subject matter on this record being pretty eye-opening. I guess one of my bigger issues with the record is the fact that some of the songwriting can be a little bit straightforward, especially when it comes to discussing something so important, but I still love the way that she sings on this album. I love the way that she uses her voice. It takes a really skilled and also confident, secure artist to allow their vocals not to overtake the instruments in the background, but also have the skill to match them at the same time, the intensity of them for that matter. Kenny Beats and 03 Greedo with Netflix and Deal. Love the album, or this EP, this joint mixtape that they got going on here. Wasn't too keen on Freddie. Who is Freddie? Wasn't too big on 03 Greedo's last effort, but I definitely think pairing him with Kenny Beats and all the wacky, janky instrumentals that he tends to create lended themselves really greatly to 03 Greedo and his voice. A track on here that I really love with Freddie Gibbs that's also fantastic, so I definitely would recommend. Earl Sweatshirt with Feet of Clay. Just a couple loosies from some rap songs, in my opinion, that ended up forming an EP. Definitely moments that were even more revealing and sometimes more telling than some of the info that we got on some rap songs. Despite it being as short as it was, this one wasn't a very long listen either. We got performances from Akami, we got performances from Mavi. Really enjoyed this record. East, even despite its really janky, weird instrumental palette, its choicing, I still like. I don't know why, but I like it. Soundtrack number 3 for anime Attack on Titan. I absolutely love the instrumental choicing for this show. Not only am I a big fan of the show, but the songs that they use, the intensity, the power that you feel listening to some of these cuts, the danger, the suspense that you might feel listening to some of these songs, despite it being attached to what a lot of people might view as a simple cartoon, and it's not. These instrumentals really invoke some hardcore emotion. Baby with Baby on Baby, not Kirk, but Baby on Baby. I actually got a lot of enjoyment out of this album. It came out earlier this year. I really like Pony. I really like a lot of the songs, the intro record, Suge. There was a lot to enjoy about this record. Didn't expect DaBaby to pop the way he did in 2019. I definitely need to give this album its credit, because when I first listened to it, I did still really enjoy it. DaBaby showed his skill set and where he shines best and in what ways he shines best without going for too long or overstaying his welcome. And I think it really showed what his strengths are on this album. Ameer Vann with his Emannuel EP, despite this not being the apology that many Brockhampton fans wanted, I still enjoy it just for the sake of its introspection. He still has one of the best pens to me in Brockhampton. There are still better songwriting as a whole from the group, but they don't make their music, again, nearly as skeletal as this. But still, I gotta say, I just enjoyed hearing from him again. I thought a good set of these records actually portrayed him in a musically competent and lyrically competent way. Despite some of the subject matter here being afflictions turning into angry rants from time to time, I do still really enjoy the fact that he put these emotions out on a record and let them speak for themselves. IDK with IsHeReal. IDK is such a talented rapper that I think will definitely shine in the year 2020. I hope to God that he can kind of pull back on these conceptual projects and just make music that he enjoys, or make music that is just a bit more fun, because when it's bogged down by a concept, you then pigeonhole yourself into talking about this thing and giving it enough detail within the confines of a short album. But something as important as religion can never be covered in that short amount of time, or even someone's interpretation of such, in my opinion. And that's where I think this album just falls short. But there are a lot of albums, or a lot of records on this album, to just be enjoyed, just based off the fact that they're enjoyable records. Post Malone with Hollywood's Bleeding. I think this is one of Post Malone's best albums. I love a lot of what he had to give here. I think he sounds in his element, in his bag. He clearly knows how to make hits. Despite him not being a lyricist, he's still a pretty decent and entertaining rapper. When he sings, and even when the corny vibrato starts to take over, I just can't help myself. I just turn into mush. Maybe not the best album of the year, but there are a lot of bangers on this album, and a lot of stuff that I'm taking with me. Dreamville came out with a collaborative effort, a third installment to the Revenge of the Dreamers 3 album series, and I was slightly disappointed with this release, but it did still include a ton of people. You can definitely tell they worked hard on it. despite it being influenced by what may already exist in the market, and also maintaining this sometimes boring sound that I don't really like from Dreamville, it is still very wholesome. Everybody just getting together, making the music that they enjoy and they like in the studio, having a good time with one another. No, you know, petty rapper beef getting in the way of the success of the record itself. So despite the fact that there were still parts of this album that I didn't enjoy to any extent, I will still say that the wholesome nature of this album will bring people back to it. Even still though, it does have a huge single. Denzel Curry with Zoo. Like this album. I did. I liked it a lot. I'm waiting for something a little bit more concrete. I'm waiting for something a bit more driven in a statement. I definitely feel like this is a good Miami homage, and I enjoyed a good portion of the records off of this album. It doesn't hit me as hard as something like Imperial or Taboo, but if this is another lead up to another album, I think it's a pretty good lead up. I think it's a pretty good precursor to a great album that we might have on the way. Dave with PSYCHODRAMA. I like this album a lot, actually. Dave hit me with some bars in the beginning of this record. I do think it was bogged down in ideas that make some of the songs damn near unlistenable. I think one of the tracks was 8 to 11 minutes of him describing an abuse story. It just got to be a little too much, but there were some singles on here that just didn't do anything for me, but there were some really strong contenders here, like letting me know that the UK is an area of the world that should always remain paid attention to. It was late last year around this time that 21 Savage released I Am Greater Than I Was, and it's still one of my favorite projects of the year 2019, despite it releasing really late, almost at the beginning of 2019. Really honed in on his style. That's all I got to say about this album. He's got style, he's got a sound, he's got his method, and it works for him. I think this is the one thing that he's done really well over the past couple album releases, and I hope moving forward he releases albums just like this and manages to craft even better songs. Action Bronson in The Alchemist with Lamb Over Rice. I don't usually like Action Bronson because I think his instrumental choicing is pretty boring and stale, but paired with The Alchemist, I think he lands himself in a lane closer to that of what Griselda was doing earlier this year. Those instrumental loop heavy samples, those soul samples in the background is exactly where I feel someone like Action Bronson excels, and I think he did a really good job with this EP, Alchemist especially. Offset came out with Father of Four earlier this year. I still think it's one of the better projects released in 2019. He definitely proved why to me, and I've always said this, he is the best amigo with the most personality, the most story. He showed why he's one of the most marketable members of the group. Angel Olsen hit me with something pretty interesting to listen to this year with her All Mirrors album. Looked at as if she's this little speck in a world that is filled with all these tempestuous instruments, so loud and grand at times, and sometimes they overtake her, which is one of my moments on the record where I don't really love where it's going, but I definitely do respect the entirety of it and how large and bigger than life it can sometimes feel. Middle Kids release new songs for old problems, and I love the way this EP sounds. It doesn't waste any time when it comes to the songs getting right into their rhythmic bag. They don't waste their time giving these edgy takes about the world. They understand that other people are going through the same things, if not worse than they are, but they still make it a point to make these songs very personal to themselves, and I love the way it comes across for the entirety of the EP. Definitely recommend it. And that's where I'm ending this video. Those are it for my honorable mentions of the year 2019. I hope y'all enjoyed it. These are a couple extras that I wanted to throw up on the list as well, but thank you for watching. Let me know what your honorable mentions of the year 2019 are in the comment section down below, and I'll let y'all know what I got coming for you tomorrow in your sub box. Thank you for watching, and I'm out. Peace.